All right. That's another episode of Rental House versus High Income ETFs, episode 12.3. We're 1 week away from this being the 1 year anniversary of when I started. I started this November 1st of 2024, and next week will be October 31st. So one more week, and then we'll be starting a new year. I think I'm going to continue this series as is till December. And then at that point, I'll decide what I'm going to do, if I'm going to continue or change it up a little bit. I might just continue because I don't plan on doing anything with the money that's in the account. So just keep it riding along, see what happens. So if you're new, I don't know where you've been, but if you are new, welcome. And what this experiment is all about, we sold the most of our rental houses. And about a year ago, we sold this last one, the one you see there on the screen. And I took that money, put it to a Robinhood account, and been investing in some high income ETFs, mostly covered call ETFs. My theory is that it would do a whole lot better than what I would have done if I would have kept the house. So we'll talk more about that in a few minutes here. So we'll get going. And before I get too far, subscribe if you would, please, and like the video and turn on notifications. And the last thing down here is that it's not financial advice. It's just me doing an experiment, entertaining people on YouTube to see if I can make money or lose money. So even if I make money or lose money, this is all about entertainment. Before I go too far, I like to always look to see how the stock market in general is doing. So I compare everything to the S&P 500. So this is the SPYI, and this is the Yahoo chart. That middle line is 20-day moving average. This Bollinger Band, you can see that the S&P is at the top of the Bollinger Band right now. That red line is the 50-day moving average. So S&P is above both 20-day and 50-day moving average. And the RSI has been creeping up a little bit. So what does that tell me? I'm looking at the SPY, Bollinger Band, 20 moving average, RSI. The RSI gets up there a little bit higher, like 70. It will indicate that the S&P is overbought. And I am looking for a little bit of a dip next week. Maybe not overall for the whole week, but I'm looking for a couple red days next week. That's just my prediction. That's not what I hope for, but that's what I expect. I had a very good week here this week, but I learned not to get too excited on the green days, and I don't get too depressed on the red days. Down here you can see the red days and green days. We did have a couple red days in the middle of the week. Okay, let's keep going. How's my account doing? So I started out with 70,000. My equity is at 92,814. If I sold everything and quit today, I'd have $92,814. I started with 70,000. I'm using margin because I wanted to boost those returns. So everybody told me how horrible margin is. Margin doesn't scare me. I consider it somewhat like a loan you would have on a rental house or a business. I kind of look at this as like a business. What is it that I own in this fund? I shook things up a little bit this past week. As the year has gone along, there's a couple of things I wished I would have did a little bit different. I wish I would have diversified right off the get-go. I started out buying a whole bunch of QDTE, and then I bought AIPI. And those are my two biggest holdings. Then I added GIAX. And then we had some down days and some up days. And I noticed when things bounced back after April that QQQI, SPYI, which I own in other accounts, they kept their NAV and they bounced back pretty quickly. It got me thinking that I would have diversified into SPYI and QQQI back then. So I started buying some shares of SPYI, and QQQI is my favorite. And so I started buying those. And then when MAGY came out, I started adding a little bit of that. And then a few weeks ago, I started moving a little bit of my QDTE around a little bit. And then I decided, let's just go ahead and rebalance things and get things equaled out among the 4 funds here that are my anchor funds for this account. And then what I did was I DTE went from 2,700 shares down to 1,200. I actually bought 50 more shares of AIPI and added a few hundred of MAGY. I think I was at 300 of QQQI, so I added 300 here. And GIAX and SPYI are the same. So I just moved some money around. Actually, here you can see what I did just this past week. I sold 800 shares of QDTE. Back here on the 2nd, I sold 700. So total, I've sold 1,500. This is what I did a few weeks ago. And then I did some more shuffling this past week. So the other thing that saved me some money, I sold QDTE on the 20th when the market was up a little bit. And the next day it dipped down a little bit, like maybe 0.5%. And then I added these other ones here. So it probably made me $50. Not a lot, but a little bit of something. So what's happened this past week or so? A lot has happened, really. Right here, I got my QDTE and I received $237. Now, if you've been following me previously, you will remember that these used to be like $500 or so, maybe 600 or even more. But since I sold out of some of this, that's going to be lower now. Then I also received QQQI, $386. Now that's going to be higher because I went from 300 to 600 shares there. And then my SPYI is sitting at 158. And actually, I cut one off down here. MAGY, I had a distribution from there also. But going forward, MAGY will be about $240 a week unless I add to that. So that's missing from this here. It will pop up on the next page here in a minute. So here's the shares that I bought last week. MAGY, I added 200 shares, and then the 300 shares to SPYI, and then the 50 shares of AIPI. You can see the distributions that I got last week. So here's the MAGY, $169. Like I said, going forward, that will be more. And then the rest of them right here. So Monday, I am expecting $238 from MAGY. So I haven't got that yet. It showed up as pending from the Robinhood page. So this is an extra slide. So this is showing how many shares I have of everything right now. Over here, it says November. I know November hasn't happened yet, but these are estimates to how November should look. And you can see that MAGY, I'm estimating about $240 a week, and QDTE about $240 a week. Now that's totally 100% a coincidence that happened like that. I want that to get to total 70,000. So SPYI is 15,000 and QQQI is about 33,000. So I want these to total about 70,000 because that's what I started with, like 70,000. And I have a lot of confidence that SPYI and QQQI are going to stick around for a long time and keep their NAV. And so I think these are going to be my forever funds. I feel comfortable if my original 70,000 is safe in these 2 funds. And then whatever else is making up the rest of it is whatever. I'm not too worried about it. But yeah, I want to get these 2 to 70,000. And then I feel safe about my original investment. So the overall market, I'm up 32.95% for 1 year since last November. This is since November 1st when I started this experiment. So that's pretty good for 12 months. Compared to each of the funds I'm holding in the account, you can see how everything's doing. So SPY or the S&P is like 15.5%, QQQ's at 22%, and down here you see QQQI, which is almost at 20%. You see why that's one of my favorites here. Yes, it's not as good as the QQQ, but having QQQI and getting that distribution of 14% per year, when I get that distribution, it goes right toward the margin, pays that down. I don't have to sell shares of QQQ, if I was holding that each month to pay down the margin, I just let the margin get paid down with those distributions. You can see the return for the rest of these. AIPI isn't too bad. QDTE isn't that bad. And SPYI is 12.68, which is a little bit behind SPY, which is expected. But GIAX is the lowest performer. At the beginning of this project, I projected how things would go. And then over here on the right is how things are actually going. Back here, I got some cells that are hidden. You can't see everything, but it started back here November 1st, 70,000. I projected I would start out 52,000 in margin for a total invested 122,000. And then, of course, it skips ahead to June. As of today, I would expect it to have been sitting at $103,000 in equity. That's very optimistic. That means I would have been up 47% over here. So in real life, I'm up to 92,815, which is not bad. Like, I'm okay with that. I would have been really okay with this over here, but I'm okay with this. Over here is what I was expecting to use in margin. I expected it to be at 77,320, but I also expected only to be using 75% of my total equity as margin. So 77,000 is 75% of 103,000 approximately. Over here, you can see that I got 77,000 in margin, which is right about where I thought I'd be, but my equity is only 92,000. So I'm at 83% instead of 75%. I might not buy anything till the end of the year, mainly to get this margin down to 75%. That's what I promised myself. If you look at this percent, it's always been in the 80s, even as high as 90 something. I'm up 4% last week and almost 4% this week. Total, I'm up 32.59%. So I'll take that. This blue line represents the 1 year anniversary, and the green line represents the end of the year. I keep going along with this project in this format until the end of the year. Then I might do something different just to change things up. This is doing what I expected it to do as far as keeping track of things. So this is all about what happened if I would have kept the house. If I would have kept the house, this is how things probably would have went. I would have collected $700 a month in rent. I would have paid 80 in insurance and 200 in taxes. And if I took all that money that I collect in rent, there wasn't no mortgage on that house. This is the positive cash flow I would have got. So I'd be sitting about $5,000. I would have assumed that equity would have grown at about $233 a month, which is like 4% per year down here. And the total with the cash and the equity would be 77,836. At the end of the year in December, I'm going to probably toss in a video, the average maintenance cost that I would have spent for the year. Or I might do that next week since it'd be 12 months. That might be a better comparison. Yeah, I'll do it next week. It might be a longer video. Year to date, the house is 77,836 and the ETFs at 92,815. So the ETFs are ahead almost by $15,000 for the year. So next week will be 1 year. I expect things to go down a little bit next week. For 1 year, I'm up 15,000. Now, I think that's pretty good. And in that year's time, I haven't had one call from the renter. So you can't beat that. And just one last reminder, this is just examples of what I'm doing, not expecting anybody to follow what I'm doing because it might not be the best ideas. And before I go, I'll add in some things. I get some sarcastic and I won't say hateful comments, but comments saying things like, "Oh my God, you're using margin, you'll lose your butt on that," and some real negative comments, I should say. And the thing is, when I started buying real estate back, I was like 22, my wife was 19. We bought a 9-unit apartment building. And we had family and friends. Everybody told us how stupid we were They said, we're going to lose everything. And at the time, we just got married. I was 22, she was 19. We had no money. We had $1,000 and we bought it from a guy who had much rental property, found out he had cancer. He was selling things on contract to get rid of stuff, trying to simplify things for his wife in case he would pass away. When I talked to him, he saw something in me, some passion about real estate, and he made me an awesome deal. He actually sold it to me 10% down. So I bought it for $100,000. This is 1988. $100,000, 10% down. And then I actually only gave him 1,000 and he financed the down payment over a year. So the whole thing was financed for over a 20-year period with a 3-year balloon. So 90,000 based on 20 years, a 3-year balloon, which means in 3 years I had to refinance and pay him the balance. He financed the down payment, 9,000 over, I think it was 9 months. I gave him $1,000 a month. The very first day we took over, I collected the deposits from the renters. I think I collected $1,500 or $2,000 in deposits. And then I bought it the first of the month. So I collected rents. The rents averaged about $350 a month. So another $2,400. The first couple of days that I owned the property, I collected like $3,500. The payment started following month. I think the payment was like $600 a month, and then the $1,000 for the down payment. So right away, I had a positive cash flow. He survived the cancer at that point. It was like 2 years I refinanced and paid him off. And then he actually offered to sell me more properties, the same types of deals. But I worked full time at a steel mill, worked swing shifts, and we had little kids. I just didn't think I had the time to do it. But if I would have looked back, I wish I would have bought everything he had because it did us very well. At the time, people were saying, "Oh, you're gonna lose everything. You're gonna go broke." The opposite happened. We didn't go broke. We went the opposite direction, whatever that is. So anyhow, let that be a lesson to people. You tell people they're gonna lose their butts or whatever. You never know till you try. So this here, like covered call ETFs and borrow margin on, you're gonna lose all your money. People tell me, I don't think so. This is not all my money. This is a little bit of my money. And I hope I don't lose it, but it's not going to make a difference in my life if this money went away. That's my story. And the moral of the story is don't listen to what other people have to say. Over the years, I developed thick skin. I taught high school for several years after my steel mill days, dealt with parents, principals, school board members, high school kids, which were actually the best of the group compared to all these other people. And so you develop thick skin. So people say you're dumb and stupid and you're going to lose all your money. It's like, whatever. So I've heard it all before. Okay, don't forget to share and do all those good things. We'll see you next week and we'll see how we wrap up 12 months with this project.